Hi, everyone. Welcome to Built Environment in a Changing Climate, Urban Design and Planning for Resilient Cities. My name is Maria Dombrov. I am, just very briefly, I am a senior research associate at Columbia University, based at the Center for Climate Systems Research and also NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies. I really that no one can see me, so I'm going to go from behind. I'll talk over here. So a little bit about me. Yeah, sure. A little bit about me is I serve as the global coordinator for a network. It's a 2,000 person network called the Urban Climate Change Research Network. I was in a few sessions before and I heard chatters of UCERN, so I'm really glad that we're all in New York together today, and UCERN's being mentioned in various sessions. So can you go back to the agenda? Okay, cool. So here's what we're going to kind of delve into over the next hour and a half. Welcome, please take your seats. I'm going to introduce you to the Urban Climate Change Research Network, provide a little bit of background information, but we're not going to dwell on it too long. I have endless links, QR codes, emails. There's even pamphlets being passed around, so feel free to grab one of us at the end to discuss more about UCERN more generally. Next, number 2 on our agenda, we're going to be summarizing the Planning, Urban Design, and Architecture for Climate Action publication. This one's like so close to being published, we can almost say that it's hot off the press. We have other ARC 3.3 is what we call it, other publications that have recently been published. And our principal editor, our first principal editor, is in the room over here, Bill Selecki. Bill, you can wave to everyone. And then 3, we're going to talk a little bit more about case studies. It's not just about the applications, the methods. We actually want to be applying these topics, delving into actual on-the-ground initiatives. 4, we're going to do some connecting the dots activities. So there's actually a giant group today, which is amazing. But we're actually going to, rather than just having presentation after presentation, our ambition is to get together, have a conversation. So we'll be connecting the dots. At that time, Jeffrey will provide more information about that, breakout groups, and also some priority plenary session. So thinking beyond climate change and connecting some of the other urban factors. And then 5, hopefully we'll get to it today, a roadmap for action charade, some kind of like an idealistic case study to envision, kind of envision the worlds that we want, not just to kind of like, envision what we want in the future rather than utilize what's existing that might not be so good. I have a colleague, Diana Rekian, who always says that it's important to envision what we want and then figure out how to get there. Just one thought, but I know there's plenty of other ways to get there. Okay, so here's a little bit about our speakers. We have Jeffrey Raven, who's a professor of urban and regional design at NYIT. Joining us online is Mattia Leone. I think Mattia is usually based in Naples, but I think he's at a European conference, so he might be somewhere else in Europe. He's waving at us on the screen, but can we get him on the screen? It's so small. Hey, Mattia. So we'll turn to Mattia in just a little bit. And then we're also joined by Martin Lehmann, Professor of Sustainability and Planning at Aalborg University. We're so privileged to have Martin with us over the last week and into this week. He's been our visiting scholar, so we've been touring him around the Columbia campus. And we also we did a little tour around New York and Manhattan last week as well. Cynthia won't be joining us today, but she's our very highly trusted advisor on many, many things. And then Susannah Kagan, also in the audience waving. Susannah is our Science to Policy Director at UCERN, and she's also done her MPA at SEPA. So we've got a lot of Columbia alumni in the building. Next, please. Briefly about UCERN. Our mission is to really provide the knowledge that enables cities as well as their metropolitan regions to lead on climate change mitigation as well as adaptation. We have a very strong focus on these three things, but we have many more foci as well. Action, equity, and sustainable development are kind of some of our three areas. We have over 2,000 scientists, scholars, expert practitioners, and span a very broad range of expertise, everyone from urban climate scientists to economists, to planners and architects, and engineers as well. We have a broad range of expertise. We're located in more than 150 low, middle, and high-income cities around the world. And Cynthia would say we're not the new kids on the block. We were formed in 2007 during the C40 Summit in New York. And then on the right, you see this assessment that I've been starting to talk about. This is our third assessment report on climate change in cities. By the name, you'll know that we have two preceding assessment processes, and the one that is happening these days is ARC 3.3. It's published as 12 separate elements by Cambridge University Press. The first one came out in February on COVID-19 climate change in cities, and the environmental justice one just came out last week. So we're really, really excited to be talking about that. Yes, Bill's clapping. I'm like clapping internally over a process that's taken us about 5 years to produce. So we're finally at this point of building momentum, sharing the knowledge. We continuously share the knowledge through the network, but it's really amazing to have these, physical, tangible assessments being published. Today, though, we're going to focus on the planning, design, and architecture element. And we have one coordinating lead author in the room who's on his phone, and we have the other one online who's Mattia. But just to say, there are, this is a giant assessment of knowledge and covers a range of topics. The ones that I've mentioned, also financing climate action, governance enabling policy environments, urban climate sciences, which is kind of our core focus. We want to have the scientific information and then be able to expand outwards from that information to then go into various fields such as planning, architecture, design. So here's just a little bubble diagram of the different things that UCERN does. We have regional hubs that serve as one of our main building blocks, and the kind of four circles around it are these kind of additional building blocks. So the assessments with the city projections, as I've mentioned, the urban design climate workshops, which we're going to be focusing on today. This is what you see on the walls right here. We have an education pillar, and we also have 2 case study databases. Next. So here is just a brief view at all of our hubs. So we have the New York Secretariat out of Columbia, NASA, and Hunter, and then we have 5 additional regional hubs throughout the world. And we're building more and more every day. Some of our new hubs are located in Nassau, Mexico City, what are the other? Cairo, Tel Aviv. Not always the easiest times to be talking about these, but the work still continues. Next. And so if you'd like to view the ARC 3.3 publications that are already available, published, scan the QR code, and here you get just a teaser on the climate projections for cities being offered through the ARC 3.3 assessment. I'll just give them a second, let everyone scan the code. Okay, awesome. Thank you for that. Very briefly, I'm not going to dwell on this. We have 2 databases of case studies. The 2 case study experts for UCERN are Susannah Kagan and Jad Ben-Hallam. So if you'd like to develop case studies, if you want to learn more about case studies, the city case studies that are offered within the network, please be in contact with them. We're very nice people, so please, approach us. Or don't, whatever you want. Just to say, here's the link to the case study atlas, pinpoints of the different city case studies being offered. We have over 230 peer-reviewed publications, and these will be, our goal is to produce thousands. So we're scaling up rapidly. Scaling up and speeding up rapidly. Here are some of the variables and the ambition as part of this new City Solutions Case Study Atlas is to provide some of that feed into the IPCC Special Report on Climate Change in Cities. And then here's a little bit more of the visioning about the digital platform. Xiaoxi, where are you? She's in the room. She's one of the ones responsible, the really main person responsible for the digital platform in interactive map development. So we're so grateful for Xiaoxi's skillfulness as we really delve into the Atlas process. So I'll stop there and I will hand it over to Jeffrey. Oh, and just scan the QR code if you'd like to learn more about submitting city case studies with the user network, which would feed into both databases, the existing user database of case studies, as well as the new, more interactive, more ambitious mapping process of case studies. Jeffrey, over to you.
Thanks, Maria. Hello, everyone. What a great crowd we got. My colleague Mattia is joining us from, I'm not sure where, somewhere in Europe. My name is Jeffrey Raven. I'm an associate professor at New York Institute of Technology here in the Manhattan campus on Broadway and 61st Street. It's a small private university, and we have a School of Architecture. Before that, I was in practice for many years doing large-scale urban design practice, both here in the United States and internationally. I'm currently on the New York City panel on climate change, which is appointed by the mayor, and it's a 3-year term where scientists essentially advise city government on climate-related science, essentially. And then obviously they would take the science and apply it to policy. We're just going to go through a brief synopsis of the thrust of the work that we did on what we call PAD, which is the Planning, Architecture, and Urban Design portion of ARC3. So maybe are you doing the,
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So just to start with, I mean, it's a lot to look at actually, but basically it's a honeycomb. I mean, you want to maybe actually, why don't you talk about the honeycomb connection?
Sure. So in my main role is project manager, and I also do some graphics on the side. So I create these kind of honeycomb cross-cutting theme graphics. So we've developed one for each one of the elements, and I'm not going to, we have so much, we have like 50 slides, so I can't really talk too long. But really the purpose of the ARC 3.3 honeycombs is to set the scene. You know, Jeffrey's joking that there's so much on the slide and there's so much knowledge in these assessments. It's hundreds of pages where it's condensed down into, then 100 pages. We've got supplementary resources. So like throughout the 5-year process, it's distilling the knowledge down and then distilling it further and then taking it a little further. And that's kind of where we get the honeycombs. There's this local distilled knowledge of information. So in the middle part, you have the planning, design, and architecture element, so the publication and its major themes. And then we have these tertiary elements with cross-cutting themes. So we've identified other publications of relevance for this specific, the planning, design, and architecture element. So this includes urban climate science, that core information that then is applicable to planning, design, and architecture. The infrastructure systems, how can you, those go hand in hand. And then you have nature-based solutions, which are a new way, not a new way, but they're a newer way to integrate planning, design, and architecture into city systems. And then we also have justice, which is also one of these core underlying themes within the assessment as a whole. So it's really just about linking the different processes and planning and implementation processes together, embedding different themes and finding distilled points of connection, which are extremely small, but and I'm not going to read them, but if you scan the QR code, you'll be able to read it in more detail.
Okay, and the other graphics, just so you know, I mean, so the other is a kind of roadmap that you see on the upper right-hand side, and I'll get into that in a little bit more detail. And then on the lower right is really a case study that we did in New York, actually, a few years ago, where you have scenario modeling for future scenario and climate adaptation and climate mitigation outcomes. Next slide. So I'm just going to do a quick summary of this, what we call Element. It's a little book, actually, by Cambridge University Press, and it's coming out really within the next month. We have essentially these bullets are the sections of this element. And then on the left are major findings and key messages, which I will focus on here. But really, let me just go through the bullets real quick. Research informing practice, practice informing research. I'm coming out of a practice background, it's true, but the DNA of our work really is that synergy between practice and research. Like you know, we've done a lot of assessment reports for climate. Now we have to pass into as much action as we can and test out ideas as quickly as we can. Urban transformation through an expanded climate and innovation agenda, climate resilient urban transformation, integrating mitigation and adaptation, which is core to what we do as part of the UCERN work. The environmental justice piece that we talked about, capacity building is absolutely critical, and many of you who are in academia know, and the academy know, how difficult it is to train, and not only train students, but train actually professors and folks, and then actually get involved in capacity building in terms of the practitioner world and also engaging with community experts. Metrics, tools, and then what we call the Urban Design Climate Workshop, which really developed during the course of this sort of 15-year process, and we'll get into that. So I'm just going to zero in on the major findings and key messages, and I want to do a quick shout out to my associates, research associates, Avinash and Paul and Ada, who are sitting over there. So next slide. So climate resilient planning and urban design, an opportunity for reducing inequalities. Who gets what? Who decides? Whose voices count? We really, and we're going to get into this actually during our sort of workshop portion, where we essentially challenge ourselves to understand the sort of value proposition of our work in climate, where we essentially ask people, and we're going to get into this later, people who are, you know, dealing with everyday challenges that they face, from crime to access to services to employment challenges, that sort of thing. How does the work that we do relate to those urgent everyday challenges that they face? And so it's really a testing method that we'll get into in a bit when we do our sort of workshop. I'm just putting a little bug in your ear that's going to be what we're going to focus on. Next slide. So the foundation of a lot of this work are essentially around 4 urban climate factors. The one on the upper left is the efficiency of urban systems, and that's a function question, right? It's how the city actually functions, how it works, and it's really around anthropogenic emissions, like emissions from, you know, people and the work that they do. The other ones, the other 3, are form-based. So you've got form and layout on the upper right-hand side. On the lower left, you've got materials and surfaces, and then vegetative cover to conclude. So And then there's a graphic that you see on the right-hand side, which essentially is sort of pushing that to the next level, where we essentially like are diagramming the relationship between form and function in a particular, in a neighborhood. And so it's a way of trying to bridge between some of the climate science and the sort of roadmap that we would use in urban design climate workshops. And we'd love to test it out today as well with you. You're not a typical, you're many of you have been in this field for a long time. But it would be really interesting to hear your feedback on this, because we'd like to test this approach out with you as well. Next slide. Of course, across spatial scales, it's very important to understand the relationship of our climate actions and strategies across different spatial scales. It was discussed in the panel this morning, the kind of different jurisdictional relationships of a district or a city or a region, especially around watersheds. You can imagine how regional a watershed is, and then how it gets down to the granular level of a lot, and private property. And that's really critical. So, and of course, each different spatial scale has different tools and different expertise in relationship to it. Next slide. And then, of course, the famous triple bottom line, which you all know about, many of you, most of you, around the climate, the co-benefits question. And that's really important, this sort of cascading benefits across these different sectors. And that sort of builds coalition as well. So you can really reach out to people outside of the sort of your area of expertise and really build a coalition around these kinds of strategies. Next. And then, so now we're into key messages, which essentially is a kind of classic assessment report breakdown. So expanding through multidisciplinary systems thinking and co-design. So you've got the relationship between climate scientists, social scientists, and then practitioners. Next. And then this idea of really like kind of having feedback loops, through the testing of your strategies, what you've learned from them, how you then revise them, and then move forward with another round, which is essentially what we've been doing through these urban design climate workshops. We have the science that we've been working on. It sort of bubbles up into our work in these workshops. We then go and engage with communities. We test out these ideas. We embed this urban design climate workshop into the function of the actual community. So we're not like trying to parachute a completely radically different way of going about it. I mean, we worked in Durban, South Africa. We worked in Rio de Janeiro and other places in Paris and elsewhere, where we essentially were not necessarily trying to be obstructionists in any way. We were simply trying to enrich the process that was currently underway. Next slide. This is really sort of around the kind of planning experts, stakeholders, and community experts, and into a kind of inclusive process for outcomes. So these are kind of the big high-level stuff from our work. Okay, next. And then finally, I don't know if it's the last one on this group, but it's close to it. Okay, two more. Individuals, institutions, and sort of governance and systems. This is a kind of really important role for each of those to play. And that's one of the messages from our PAD, our report. Essentially, you've got the role of institutionals with respect to the skills and teaching and all that, and the sort of government policy, and then all the way down to the individual, the action that they take, either as a practitioner or a member of the public, what have you. Next. And then finally, this sort of, before and after sort of situation, where you've got the current situation was sort of slow and with the consequences of inequalities and maladaptation, to the sort of much more transformative adaptation where there's a creative process that is underway, which is really exciting, and not necessarily all negative. It can be very positive, and that actually then is a question of how you replicate it and scale it. Okay. So with this, we move to Mattia. Are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
All
Can you
right.
hear me well?
Yeah.
Oh,
So this is
great.
Mattia Leone from. Where are you now located, Mattia?
I'm now in Rimini at the European Conference on Climate Change Adaptation.
Okay.
Tomorrow we have a session with the European Commission Research Office, and first thing probably I will recommend that we start working on integration of mitigation and adaptation, even the name of the conference, because we cannot delay more this integration of approaches and knowledge. But by the way, I'm really sorry for not being with you all in person. I've been lucky enough to come often in New York in the last years. Unfortunately, not today. I will really briefly go through some of the most recent, I would say, application of the urban design climate workshop methodology that Jeffrey basically outlined, and because it's part of the backbone of the report that was introduced. I'm from the University of Naples, Department of Architecture. I work on a research center that is working on risks, both geophysical and climate hazards, and I'm the co-director of the European hub of the Urban Climate Change Research Network. And next slides, I will introduce on a few of this example, which are also model of how we can bring this forward. So these are all representing activities in which cities work very closely, and communities from this cities work very closely with us. And we managed to do this mostly because of the European funding for a collaborative project where we could also involve US entities, including Colombia, thanks to the Urban Climate Change Research Network, and also thanks to additional activities. You'll see in the Rio case that Jeffrey mentioned also how we pooled resources to collaborate, especially when it comes to the global outreach. So each of our hubs is trying to do our best to connect globally this intense research and practice work. So first slide you see here, it's yes, we were been talking about how to work with the communities and stakeholders from the cities. This co-design approach is one of the backbone of our work. Collaborative mapping of knowledge, of local knowledge on site, and of community priorities, as Jeffrey mentioned. And in this workshop, so in this case, we are in Thessaloniki. Up 2030 project is our Horizon Europe project on carbon neutral and smart cities mission. And the goal of the city is, you see the pages on the top right, is to build a climate plan for a district. So here we're talking about the district climate action plan. From the image in the bottom, which is just an example of the kind of visual we usually work with communities. So I mean, I'm an architect, but technical drawings are not really easy to use and for understanding and visioning future. So you see this 2025, 40, 50, which is the scenario modeling that approach firstly with communities to understand the priorities and the need for action. And then in the next slides, you see how then through digital tools and simulation, we bring this, we were working on a district scale, so we mostly work with a three-dimensional, with a fine grain, incorporating all the projection and climate data that Maria showed at the beginning, downscaling at the level of the urban blocks to understand the effect of the urban climate factors that were introduced. And you see here example based on current and future climate, and with current urban condition, future urban condition, to support and make a sense of urban transformation as co-designed with communities and stakeholders, also with respect to their potential in terms of adaptation in this case, but also tracking on energy efficiency and carbon emission. Next slide is another example where we actually need to bring the whole team together. The General Secretariat from New York and a Latin American hub supported this part of a project which is still ongoing in the up 2030, by the way, also Thessaloniki, more to come, in Rio. Rio, which is a global city, huge city. So actually, we are talking about a district, but a district in Rio scale is not a district in Thessaloniki scale. So basically, in Rio, a district is almost like a small city in Europe. And here see, for example, another way work with scenario modeling. GIS are mostly used when we're dealing with urban and large district scale to connect heat, for example, and flood simulation with respect to a current state and again, a future scenario. In this case, we incorporated several of the projects that have been envisioned by the local city plan, the PDS of the city of Rio de Janeiro. And in the next slide, you see how then the focus goes into more detail. This is a portion of the district critical in also in our focus. We are still working on that in upcoming months, where a series of converging potential transformation of systems could happen. Intermodality and mobility system, including the transformation of the port area to a large pedestrian zone, a green infrastructure reconnection, and housing construction. These are a few of the plans, including the new Flamengo Stadium, so including major important city infrastructure, how we can incorporate that into a climate resilient, which integrate a mitigation sense of transformation here. And you see how we go when in prototypes that deals with the arrangement of urban morphology and green cover, and always comparing scenarios with the support of simulation. The last case is where I come from. Next slide. It's from the city of Napoli. It's another project always funded by no European Union and always supported by the UCCRN, because we're basically importing the UDCW approaches and making them actionable in city context. What you see here is a large group of on the top left side of city stakeholder, regional, state, and local authorities that are being called together and disturbed a little bit to play and in the envisioning of priorities in terms of integrated action for mitigation adaptation, but also in the vision for the future, where all the the need for socioeconomic and environmental improvement are much needed equally as advantages on climate change mitigation adaptation. Then we also did a similar process with the community on actually in one specific neighborhood in the city to mostly to prove the connection that exists potentially between city planning and bottom-up initiatives. This to release what you see there is called PAESC in Italian. It is the SECAP from the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy, where we basically define, through the help of stakeholder and community, a pathway and a timeline for the future, which has been broken down into specific action and then incorporated into the SECA planning. And the last slides shows what we are also hoping and potentially will be able to bring in cities, which is towards digital twin, like able to measure the effect of planet transformation, both in terms, you see on top some adaptation key performance indicator, on the bottom some more related to mitigation and of course socioeconomic aspects, but also on the let's say the right hand side, the importance of advancing on design prototype. If I will say name a topic for future of research and practice, if design for transformative system change, where we need to understand this major driver of carbon emission could be converted into drivers of local transformation to redistribute wealth and ensure equitable access to resource, and especially regenerating ecosystem while improving societal benefits. And this is, in a nutshell, it's what urban design climate research should be, one aims to be, and actually is being. Thanks.
And with that, to be your number. We're going to Martin just give his experience on urban design climate workshop, and then we'll.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Yes, my name is Martin Lehmann and associate professor at Aalborg University in Denmark. I'll give a little bit of a, without any slides, I'll give a little bit of a speak about how we are trying to integrate, have tested the urban design climate workshops, and then how we're going to use them going forward. And it's especially integrated into the learning model that we have at our university, which is very problem-oriented, trying to build both engagement with community stakeholders, as well as transversal learning and knowledge in our planning and engineering education. So we can do the 1 or 2 week very intensive workshops, or we can do 1 year urban design climate activities. And then we can do a third, which is engaging in continued ed with practice, with planners, through the urban design climate workshop style, where they bring their own case and then work together with us and communities. At this conference, which is about mobility, plan relocation, etc., one of the things we can utilize the urban design climate workshops for is put contested issues on the agenda through students. Then it's not as, potentially not as contested because they're just students. But they're not practiced, they're not planners, they're not coming from the government, they're just students. They can do a lot of work anyway, and they learn along the way. And one of the things that we really do with the urban design climate workshops is for the students to also understand that what they read in strategies, planning documents, etc., might not be the only truth out there. So going out into the community and working with the community and getting their understanding of what the problem is valuable in their planning, future planning practice. That might be more than just planning, and also a lot about facilitation. One of the things we can then do is the unusual aspects, putting things on the agenda like planned relocation, which is not in our documents at the moment, not in our climate adaptation plans in Denmark at all. And this is actually possible through that 1 year working with the community, really trying to understand the science, understand the, not just up until 2050, but 2100 and potentially beyond, where is planned relocation a potential adaptation solution. And because it's from students, it is not as dangerous because there's nobody from government saying that this is something that we do. So in that sense, it's a community engagement plus a learning tool throughout our master's education. And this is basically what we are trying to do now, both the very intensive ones, but also the 1 year ones. We'll start from this fall, basically.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to now move into the connecting the dots portion of this exercise. So we've developed this kind of methodology. You could see, you can't read it, but you could see different sort of phases and steps and all that. And also the kind of prioritization that occurs in our work. So identifying then zones that are absolutely priority zones to focus on, either due to a demographic situation that exists, where people are more vulnerable to climate impact, or a zone that is heavily utilized, that sort of thing, and actually then that becomes a focus of our work in a sub-district. Next. So we've done, like we said, a number of these urban design climate workshops. You saw from Mattia's presentation, everywhere from Brooklyn, New York, to Paris, to Barcelona, Durban, Rio, in Naples, Italy, et cetera. And next slide. And we've sort of, this process really is sort of focusing on stakeholder priorities, understanding the urban systems that are at work, then doing this sort of intensive co-design process, developing a series of metrics and key performance indicators, and then ultimately feeding into policies and feedback. And we'll get into a little bit of this in a minute. This happens to be Durban, South Africa, where you see this image. Next slide. So, this is where it gets interesting. Well, not that it wasn't interesting before. But this is maybe, it's actually where you're going to have to do some work. What we do is we gather community experts together, and we essentially introduce ourselves, of course, as climate. We're doing an urban design climate workshop, et cetera. And a lot of folks just are like, it's oftentimes quite abstract. And then we just zero in on, let's just hear about your community and what are the kind of key priorities that you're facing every day in your community. When you wake up in the morning, what is it you think about? What is your family, what kind of challenges are they facing, et cetera. And this is an example of some of these challenges and sort of opportunities that we got from our work in Durban. And so you'll see this, everything from congestion and traffic to, hotter temperatures, to inadequate funds to implement community priorities, et cetera. And I think that this is, there's a little diagram that I did in the back of a napkin on the left, where essentially there are a lot of community priorities that are out there. Again, we're not trying to necessarily create new community priorities. There are a lot of them community initiatives run by local community organizations, et cetera. The question is, how do they tie into the work that we do? Or do they tie in? And that's a way of testing also what we do. And so, next slide, please. And so I'm going to ask you to gather into groups of 5, like 5 groups, I should say, not groups of 5 people, but 5 groups, and to generate a series of priorities that you see are foremost for cities to grapple with, that are not necessarily climate related, but beyond climate, that are kinds of everyday challenges that people face. And maybe a lot of you are from New York, but maybe you're from another place as well. It'd be very interesting for you to bring that feedback to the table. Now, what do we do with this information? What's the next slide after this? Okay. Yeah, the next, so go back previous. Yeah. So if you see here, and Ada, you have your, so we have done a little bit of a head start where we've generated a series of Durban-related priorities, right? And we're going to put them here and we're going to put these and yours on this wall here. And then we're going to do a test. We're going to start to tie in those urgent priorities that are beyond climate, that are broader sets of priorities that have been identified, and place them in one of these 4 boxes. It seems very simplistic, I know, but it just will generate a conversation perhaps. So let me remind you what these 4 boxes are. These are called urban climate factors, okay? It's not generated by, this is my drawing, it just so happens, but these were not generated by me, these are generated by urban climatologists. And remember, the 4 are, this is a function, urban function, anthropogenic emissions around the efficiency of urban systems. So it's everything from how people get to work every day, the decisions that they make in their everyday lives, how, where industry is located, that sort of thing. This is form and layout. So 3-dimensional form, the configuration of a city in 3 dimensions. Building material, building envelope and surface materials. And lastly, green and blue infrastructure. Now, just a kind of little hint, if you remember from the last presidential campaign, for those of you who were vaguely interested in what happened, there was one of the candidates who said, when I think about climate, I think about 3 things. Do you remember what they were? Jobs, jobs, jobs. Remember that? You don't remember that. Okay. Well, the point, I think what was interesting there was this tie-in with sort of larger societal issues that resonated, if you will. So if you were going to flip the switch, the script and say, every day I worry about my kid getting a job, let's say, then there might be something in here for that person, right? And that's sort of what we were going with in this sort of connecting the dots question. Any questions? So again, so what we'll do is we have a sort of a head start here. I thought would be great if we put together 5 groups, right? And if you, or we can just go ahead and just riff and start, I could say what they are. And if you think that there are some missing ones, maybe that's easier, given the, if there are missing ones, we can, Ada, you could maybe do your number. So what we'll do is we'll put these up here on the wall. It seems like that's maybe easier. And then I'll read them off to you. And then Ada, why don't you go ahead and start putting, why don't you put them up on the wall here? All right, and maybe Peter, you help. And so let's say what they are. So affordable housing. So remember, the question is, how does this relate? How do these relate to this? And then we're going to, once we go through this exercise, which is about sort of 15, 20 minutes, we're going to continue into how do we then apply this into a fictitious place? Like, so we created, thanks to Avinash here, a fictitious town that has certain problems. And then we're going to apply what we've learned here, which is essentially we're going to create a programming priority, if you will, that involves climate, but also involves broader societal issues. And we're going to apply them in this fictitious place. And I'm going to be sharing with you not only in the presentation on the screen, but also examples of this place. And you can actually gather with your neighbor and come up with perhaps a way of moving forward based on these kinds of challenges. Any questions about that? Is that like really confusing, or are you on board with it? Is that all right? Okay, all right. A few people have reluctantly.
Okay, so everyone's going to get into groups, right? Well, so why don't we all get into groups now?
You want to do that now? And then
Yeah,
Yeah?
yeah, I think, yeah, let's get people up and talking to one another.
All right. So the word on, and then what we'll do is we'll just say what these are, and the people can add to them. Yeah, does that make sense? We've got a fantastic 2 scribes here who can add to them, and then we're going to then take this and place it here, or if it doesn't fit at all, it's off. It's off, and that's very interesting to us because then we say, well, then the climate, it's not, I mean, you're really kind of, there are some things that are completely outside of the purview of urban climate science and strategies and policies. So I think that's a very good test. I don't know if you agree, but I think for me, it's a very useful test. So that's, all right, so you want to read it off? Paul, why don't you read this, these ones in yellow?
Okay, maybe. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. I just try to read them quite rapidly so we can go into work groups. So in orange, yellow, open spaces restoration, green economy, attract mixed income housing, green infrastructure, recycling investment, nature-based green solution, urban agriculture, local food markets, circular economy. Please excuse me for my accent. I'm not English native. Okay. Next, for challenges, we have affordable housing, inadequate housing, open space, crime, economic slowdown, job creation, public health, access to services, transport, safe neighborhoods. And last, with risks, declining quality of life, decay of social cohesion, inadequate, what's this word? Funds, sorry, inadequate funds, unsafe or absent recreational amenities, unsafe infrastructure, air pollution, urban heat island effect, flooding and drainage issues, congestion, inefficiencies. Yeah, sorry.
Please write the title of the categories on top.
Yeah, Ada, thank you. And the three last ones are inadequate public transport, outdated energy grid, and poor intramodality. I hope you remembered
They remember everything.
everything what I just said. Maybe you can get up if you want.
So there are challenges, there are risks, and there are opportunities. Well, why don't we just open it up and not worry about what's on the board, just to make sure. And then if you just start riffing, we can see if it's on the board or not. And if it's not on the board, we'll add it. But if it's on the board, we'll say we got that covered.
Yeah, just to clarify, what you want are the priorities for cities, but in any particular types of priorities? What do you want us to?
Imagine that you're a community expert. You've shown up to this meeting and you've been asked to share your priorities for your city. And there are a few elected officials, there's some random scientists who are up there, et cetera. And they pass the mic to you and say, what's important to you? So you don't know anything necessarily about the specificity of exactly what we're talking about. This is a little bit out of left field, but you got a lot to say about your life, the life that you're living. So, for us, it's important. Yes.
I would say brain drain and an aging population.
Brain drain. All right. Brain drain. Your brain, it's draining.
Is that a risk?
It may be, what would you put that in? A risk?
Maybe a challenge.
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 Challenge. Brain drain. Oh. Okay, brain drain. And so you said as a corollary, it was brain drain and
Aging population.
aging population. All right, those are two things. Here, you want to? Okay.
Education.
Education. How are we doing on education? All right, education. You're gonna have to go fast now.
Opportunity.
What would you call that? An opportunity? Opportunity, perhaps. Challenge and opportunity. Okay. Yes.
Energy cost burden.
Energy costs. What would you put that under?
Challenge.
Challenge. Energy cost. Energy. Yes.
Access to healthy food.
Healthy food.
Challenge. You know what? I'm gonna go fast.
You want to say, Abby, what would you come? Just make sure you capture all this. That way we give it away. Wait, okay. Healthy food. Was there somebody over here that was no, okay. Yes.
Civic infrastructure.
Civic infrastructure. You got something? No, civic. So maybe that's you want to.
Sure. I was going to say houselessness and urban sprawl and conflicts about land use.
Okay, so houselessness or homelessness or houselessness, homelessness, urban sprawl. Homelessness, would you maybe a challenge? And then what was the other one?
The land use, I think, kind of urban sprawl goes together.
Sprawl. Okay, so urban sprawl. Okay, you got that. Okay. Was there? Yes.
What
is it?
Flood vulnerability.
Flood vulnerability. Do we have that? Flooding.
Flooding is a risk.
Yeah, we thought we had a lot more of it. They're like, all right, flood vulnerability. I mean, it seems like a pretty no-brainer. That's true. Flood, put that in there. All right, Avinash is adding that. Flood. That would be a risk. Yes, I would say that's a risk. Susannah.
Sanitation and fresh water.
Sanitation and fresh water. You can write that down. Sanitation, fresh water. Yes,
To waste management systems as a challenge and
waste.
opportunity, democratic government.
See, I knew governance would come in. I knew that. I came in Durban too. We were like governance, and we're like, oh, where are we going to put that one? Governance. And you said waste, but I think you got waste, right? Okay.
Community co-production under opportunities.
Community can you flesh that out a little bit more?
Basically making sure that, you talked about this already.
Yeah.
Making sure that the approach you're taking is to not just like dive into a community,
Okay.
but what they need and
Right.
they plan with their leadership.
Okay. So just say co-production. Anybody else? Oh, you did the food already.
Yeah.
No, just kidding. So go ahead. Yeah.
So I just want to note that first in the green said
Yeah.
democratic governance. Democratic is a keyword. I think is a keyword there. Interesting.
It's very interesting because when we start going internationally, it gets a bit tricky when we start bringing in our democratic governance. But I think it's a very good. So democratic governance.
Yeah, democratic. Okay.
Yes. You want to say something?
We offer universal access to healthcare and persistent racial and ethnic
How are
inequality.
we doing there? So healthcare.
Universal access.
Public
health, we got that. Is that not the same as universal access? Okay. Sure. And racial and ethnic inequality.
Okay. Was there anything?
Ethnic inequality.
Racial and ethnic inequality. Yes.
Biodiversity and loss.
Biodiversity and loss.
Biodiversity and loss.
Oh, biodiversity lost. Okay. So the loss of biodiversity. Biodiversity. Loss. Yes.
Youth development opportunities.
Youth development. Do we have something about there was education, right?
Yeah.
But it's beyond that, right? You're looking beyond that into youth development. Okay. Yes.
Access to cultural resources.
Access to cultural resources. So cultural resources access. I got a feeling these 4 squares are going to get filled up pretty quickly. Yes, did you want?
Misinformation and also rising popularity of hate groups. Like,
Wow. Okay. Misinformation. That's an interesting one. Okay.
Financing.
Disaster financing. We have financing for disaster. Okay. Disaster financing. Yes.
NIMBYism.
NIMBYism.
Technology access.
Access to technology. Do we have technology access?
And language access.
What do you mean by language?
I guess we build access to services, or I was also thinking with cultural resources.
And you're saying cultural and language resources, perhaps?
Like, in New York City, we have obviously the mass Hispanic population.
Right.
We translate a lot of our
Okay.
communications into Spanish.
Okay.
Being wary of large diaspora.
NIMBY is not in my backyard. They're from France, so it's. So this is language access.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
Language access. Maybe it covers it. Anybody else? Yes.
Here.
Childcare. Oh, that's a good one. Childcare.
Childcare.
Childcare. Okay. Oh, yes.
Depopulation.
Depopulation. Depopulation. Okay. Okay. Well, we got a lot here. Okay. So imagine you're, coming in with a climate hat on your head, and you're you come to this city, and you say, what are the kind of key issues? And you're imagining your head is the hat that you're wearing is a climate hat, and then you hear all of this stuff, right? And don't you think, in a way, I mean, I don't want to put too fine a point, it's pretty obvious, but one of the challenges that we have in this sort of area of climate science is, yeah, sounds good, but what a luxury to talk about that. What a luxury you have to spend time and money on climate related stuff when we're dealing with the basic everyday challenges of getting through this life. So this, in a way, is a challenge for us to start to connect the dots. And some dots are weak, and some dots are, the connections are weak, and some connections are stronger. But maybe we can have that conversation now on. And if you don't think that, if this is too constraining for you, then maybe, we're okay with broadening this out. But take these in a kind of as broad a way as you can. Okay, these are 4 climate factors that were not developed by me. It was developed by climate scientists, right? And it really sort of tried to encapsulate urban climate factors. Okay. So again, efficiency of urban systems, we're looking at connections, government services, things of that nature is what we're talking about, how people actually use a city, how they access services, things of that nature. That's that one. This one is really about the decision about the configuration of a neighborhood, like how it's actually designed in 3-dimensional form. I don't have to tell you, those of you who are in New York who know about Local Law 97, that's a cottage industry that's starting up. Basically, we're trying to retrofit our buildings, and there's a lot of work involved. There's a lot of training involved in terms of retrofits. And all around the world, they're facing the same kinds of jobs, and a lot of people are having to learn new skills in retrofit. And then finally, in green and blue infrastructure is a pretty, you all know that it's an area that's going to require a lot of maintenance, a lot of investment, and has knock-on effects across multiple sectors. There's a huge coalition that can be built around these kinds of. So that's the other thing is, like, when I work with my students, sometimes I give them a challenge. I say, we're going to assume that you're the mayor of a city and you were elected with a platform that I'm going to increase tree canopy coverage and vegetation by 30% in this city. And you win the election and you bring your government together, and they're all around the table, and they have health, economic development, energy, transportation, sanitation, all that. And you say, right, let's make this happen, this 30% increase in vegetative cover. And pretty much to everyone, they just look at you with blank stares and they say, that's for the Parks Department. I'm sorry. I've got a lot of meetings. I have a very busy day, very busy schedule. You say, no, actually, you're very much involved in this conversation. And how are they involved? How are all those, talking about this one here, health, transportation, energy. So those are the kinds of questions that I have for all of you. So should we start? Access to healthy foods. Who did that one? Tell me, where would you put access to healthy foods in this? So again, efficiency of urban systems, form and layout, building envelope, surface materials, green and blue infrastructure. Or none of the above, or another category. Any thoughts on how this might intersect with climate?
Maybe in green and blue infrastructure, you've got a community, like,
Community,
where people can access.
community garden, perhaps, okay. Anybody else on this one? Anybody else on that? Yeah. What?
Most cities don't. Specifically need urban agriculture. Cities actually rely on producing their own food in the cities, so having the infrastructure to import.
So could we say it maybe sits between those two in a certain way? There's maybe much more of a like granular local quality, but then there's, you know, a mega city of 20 million, you know, we're not into necessarily doing community gardens everywhere, perhaps. So perhaps, yeah, oh, sorry, yes, is somebody else? Yes.
Just one phrase that I think it has to be intentional in terms of a layout perspective, right? Because if it's not intentional, you see it in New York, you have food deserts and places where if there's not if it's not intentionally designed that a grocery store or a farmer's market is going to be located in this neighborhood, it's not going to happen. So I would say it's also layout, because people need to be able to walk instead of, you know, cross the entire city to
Yeah,
that market, providing the healthy.
that's true. Food deserts, right? So we got a food desert problem. So that's also, this kind of sits in a lot of squares, isn't it? All right, so let's put it sort of, all right, should we, this one? Oh, you got this one? Okay. Sorry. Or intermodality. I don't know if that's a very wonky statement, right? I don't know if like this citizen who just arrived at this meeting is going to say poor intermodality. What's another way of saying this, do you think? I can't get to work. I'm having trouble accessing transportation. Yes, do you want to?
I mean, I didn't say this, but I feel like we need mixed use development.
Why is that?
Sort of share resources between buildings or for different, you know, different districts have different purposes, but if you're able to share that infrastructure, it's more efficient.
Okay, and that has a climate implication, right? Because you're perhaps shrinking your mobility footprint, perhaps?
And materials, energy.
Yeah. Anybody else on intermodality? I mean, efficiency of urban systems, it would seem, would be part of that, yeah? So I would say it probably resides again between these two. Okay. Biodiversity loss? That was easy.
No, it's also form and layout.
Oh. No. Form and layout. All right, so pop it up here, maybe the next one up. A little bit sort of in the middle there.
Okay, zoning would be under form and layouts.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. Racial inequality. Sorry, we're climate scientists. Where would you put it?
Form and layout,
Form and layout.
think about segregation, de facto segregation,
Yeah.
generous segregation.
We might also, you might sit here as well, right? A little bit in the efficiency of urban systems, like how can people who are out, like disconnected, can be connected to job opportunities and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it could also belong to building envelope and surface materials of people who are more economically disadvantaged or living in places that are less resilient to the climate crisis.
Yeah. And, you know, huge job opportunities in terms of perhaps this one as well, job training. Anybody else on this? So it seems like that sits somewhere maybe over there. Sanitation and fresh water. Well, those are two different things maybe, but but with this group, they may be connected. I don't know. Sanitation and fresh water. let's put it there for now. Anybody else? What do you got? Financing for disaster. Financing for disaster. What do you think? Financing for disaster. That's maybe could be a governance sort of related issue. I don't know, but it might make its way into the for. Let's see. Urban heat island effect. It's hot. It's getting hotter in our neighborhood. We don't have AC. We don't have access to cool zones. The kids can't play outside. Where would you put it?
Building envelope service materials.
Building envelope surface material. Where would you put it?
Okay, all three of them. What are the issues?
All three, like this zone, like these three. All right. Tract mixed income housing. I think we kind of might have covered that a little bit. Where would you put that? Mixed income, I think we did this racial inequality, maybe that was part of that, yeah?
Okay. Form and layout too, like, isn't that the sort of, zoning again? I mean, if you're trying to build and
That's true. Move it over a little bit.
Crime. Come on. Anybody?
urban design doesn't have anything to do with crime.
Eyes on the street? Eyes on the street? There's a lot out there in terms of the relationship between planning and crime. Yep.
Well, I've heard that from one of the feminist studies where a lot of crime is sexual harassment.
Okay.
And that there are urban design interventions that planners can introduce, such as having the lights on the street.
Lights.
Having so this could be urban design layout, because if you can reconfigure, either infrastructure just to provide more autonomy.
Okay. Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
have it such that
Okay.
people can actually look into
Yeah.
when they're happening.
Okay.
With less alleyways, for example.
Okay. Okay. What about maladaptation that we have up here in terms of crime? What could be up here that's going to possibly, according to some people, be a great place for criminals to hide? Yeah.
Green infrastructure.
Yeah, you heard that too, right? I've heard that. Why are you planning like an urban forest here? At night I'm going to walk by this forest. It's going to be like a little scary. Yeah, did you want?
I was just gonna say, I actually saw recently an empirical study that shows that when there's access to green space, I think gun violence goes down as well.
Goes down. Okay, so why don't we put it sort of here? Or maybe between here and here. Okay. All right, what else we got? Job creation. Job creation.
All of them.
All of them. Like, can you tell me a little bit more why all of them?
Well, you were saying that there's like the renovations, that there's a lot of jobs happening there.
True.
Green infrastructure, blue infrastructure needs a lot of maintenance.
Maintenance.
Form and layout, or it's building new things or redesigning or creating new spaces.
Okay.
Zoning.
And what about the efficiency of urban systems?
People are in systems.
They need to get to work.
Yeah.
Okay. Somewhere in the middle. What else? Is this anyway? I mean, we can go faster if you want. So, do you want to? How are we doing time wise, Maria?
15 minutes.
We have 15 minutes until the end.
Yeah.
Okay. So why don't we just say, all right, urban agriculture. Do you mind if I try to go fast and then you just tell me no, no, no? Urban agricultural, local food markets. Let's put it sort of over here. Air pollution. It's a lot of places, but maybe a combination of that's that goes across many, many ones. Flooding, drain, do we have all of the stuff that you put up on there? It's in here now? Okay, great. Flooding and drainage, maybe part of this green infrastructure business, right? Misinformation, oh. Misinformation, well.
Yeah.
Maybe up here. Inadequate funds, anybody? Well, this is part of the financing and job creation and all that. And this is tricky. Let's hold that off unless anybody has a brilliant, yeah.
Depopulation and funds, because you need tax base to pay for things.
Well, there you go. See, I knew. So there you go. So where would that go then?
Everything.
Congestion, traffic, congestion. Intermodal, maybe efficiency of urban systems. You're bringing in mass transit. Decay of social cohesion. Well, why don't you guys keep going? Maybe they'll work, and I'm going to finish my presentation. Actually, I have a pretty quick series of so here. Why don't you keep going with the placement of those things, and while I do.
But also, if you feel strongly about one of the ones that was your suggestion, just go up there and put it where you want to put it.
Yeah, if you want, you can get up and actually put it where you. I don't want to make you guys have to like move up. Why don't we keep going with this thing? So okay, keep going. All right, so basically, let me go back one slide. So anyway, you basically kind of get the drift of what we're. Sorry, thank you. You get the drift, I think, based on what we've just been doing. And I think it's really interesting. So let's just talk about what we just did here. Don't you think, in a way, by doing this exercise, that we start to develop a programmatic prioritization in a way that is reflective of community priorities, but also ties in with climate factors? And I think that, to me, then sets the stage for the following phase, which is actually testing perhaps climate-aligned redevelopment or retrofit. Yeah.
Explain how this exercise shows that programmatic prioritization. I understand how it works to like make the point that all of these social issues are linked to design and green infrastructure and climate change, but I don't understand how it prioritizes.
Oh, right. So that's a really good question. So, this is a pretty much, it's flat, right? There's no hierarchy here. So I think there's one missing step that you just talked about, which is essentially like, we can rank some of these, right? What are the what are the synergies, if you will, that we can have cascading benefits? If we do one thing, it's actually going to cascade across multiple benefits across multiple sectors. I'll give you a perfect example. There's the integration of climate mitigation and climate adaptation. We don't have unlimited sources of funding in cities. It's true that we could put sandbags everywhere along the coast and protect the coast. But if instead we invest a little bit more and we create a sort of series of green infrastructure interventions, linear parks, sponge city concepts, et cetera, it's going to cost a little bit more upfront, but the payback may be greater. And also the community will reap more benefits through quality of life and that sort of thing. So that's a little bit maybe to your point, the kind of conversation that we might have on the ranking question. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah.
Just to build off of that, to me, what's I think missing, and I stepped out of the room, so I may have missed this part, but this is a snapshot in time, and this priorities now. Right. But of course, in climate planning, we're thinking about the future, and a lot of the work that my organization does is also is bringing also the demographic change projection coupled with the climate projections to understand how very human priorities now might shift in the future based on changes in population. So do you engage with that
Yeah.
part of it? as well?
So I'm really glad you mentioned that, because actually that ties into the next phase here, where essentially what we try to do is let's just go to the next. So what we actually go back. Okay, so essentially what we try to do is we zero in on, of course, in alliance with the city that we're working with. They have identified areas that are in flux. There's a redevelopment plan that's underway. There's new population pressures due to migration, et cetera. So what we do is we try to choose a zone, a district, that is undergoing a population growth. We're assuming a population growth as a test case for these urban design climate workshop principles, right? So we're always like, we're going with this theory, can we have it all? In other words, we're increasing the population in a district. The district is getting hotter and it's getting wetter. And then the question is, how can we use climate resilient urban design techniques to create in the future a district that is a desirable place to live, that has a high quality of life, and that is equitable, that access to services and that sort of thing. So that's the sort of challenge that we use. So therefore, you see these sort of a population that grows. You can see these little balls there that are like larger, the population grows. And then you have these urban systems and the different user groups that will be facing, these different urban systems. And it's based on this you go back one slide. Sorry. So it's based on these 6 sort of not necessarily sequential buckets in this planning process. And I'll just say what they are. I have to look here for a second. So the first one is synergies and adjacencies of urban systems and users. The second is across different spatial scales. That's number 2. Number 3 is a sort of hybridization of new kind of prototypes that are emerging from these, let's just say, things like battery towers, that sort of thing, that are emerging from this, data centers, that kind of thing, that are really challenging. Urban climate factors that you remember from here. And then urban form opportunities and constraints. And then finally, the urban climate goals. So those are the 6. So let's go through them real quick. Next. So this is really a prioritization of this type of district, to your point, where you see a development floor area that is small and that essentially is going to grow in terms of the district is going to be experiencing greater density. So there's a full build out scenario with pipeline projects, and my friend Avinash here helped with the graphics and all that. Next slide. And you can see the population grows in this district. So a demographic change is happening. And this is a current condition and a future baseline with, okay, there's new development happening, but the systems are inadequate to essentially, service this larger population. There's only a bus route, there's a waste hub, okay, fine, but the population is growing. Next. And how do we sort of choose this area? Well, let's say this is a district that sits within a larger city that is experiencing, you can see heat and flooding challenges. And this district has a lot of the kind of challenges that the overall city is facing, so it becomes a kind of replicable system. We can learn lessons from it. Next slide. So, you've got the current condition here with vehicular congestion, you've got issues of health, education, waste, water, energy, food, and the lack of green spaces. These are the kinds of challenges that we address, and we sort of determine based on a future population that you will need this number of hectares of green spaces, this amount of schools, et cetera. So it's tied to this programming that we just talked about right here. Next slide. And then these kind of emerging typologies that I just mentioned around energy synergized development, like around transportation systems, intermodal last mile freight hubs, circular economy zones, positive energy mixed use housing, manufacturing hubs, energy waste food hubs, energy storage hubs, those kinds of things. Those are emerging typologies. Okay, these are not your typical architectural forms that 20 years ago we didn't think about these. Now these become, so there's a challenge for architects, designers, landscape architects, et cetera, to develop these kinds of new emerging typologies. Next. And these are some examples of like residential, next, manufacturing, in urban manufacturing. It's not your old 20th century manufacturing, it's 21st century manufacturing. Next. And then urban climate science, where we sort of develop a kind of methodology that Mattia just mentioned, of sort of climate analysis mapping, the evaluation of public spaces and how people actually use the neighborhoods. It's quite different, let's say, in Norway than it is in Rio de Janeiro, how people use outdoor spaces and that sort of thing. So it's really important to understand the kind of social life of the city. Planning and design intervention, where we actually test these interventions and then do a kind of post-intervention evaluation. And when I mean intervention, it's with a small I, because it's tied in with the redevelopment plans that are underway with the city. Next slide. So, for example, we have city scale and district scale, and we have these current heat and flooding condition at the city scale, and how it plays out at the neighborhood scale is really kind of the crux of our work. So one of the most important takeaways from today's session that I want you to remember is the importance of the district as a spatial scale. We work really at the district level. That's our sweet spot, because districts are nimble scales. There's a lot happening at the district level, but they're also really challenging because there's not a clear jurisdiction around districts. There's no elected district official, for example. There are mayors, there's neighborhood, of course, there are some electoral, like city council members, et cetera. But when we're talking about a district around, say, a watershed area, oftentimes those sit within 2 or 3 different districts with competing, we heard it this morning, competing interests, right? Competing political parties, that sort of thing. So this is really the crux of a lot of our work is at that scale. I always say the district is an orphan. The district is an orphan. Okay, so we're really trying to look at maybe even governance structures, to your point here, governance structures that might be overlays over districts. Next slide. Oh, you have to wrap up? Let's go quickly. Priority zones. Then these become climate aligned scenarios where we sort of develop these scenarios for a climate aligned future. Existing condition, future baseline, and a future climate aligned scenarios. And then lastly, this is an example of this project we did in Gowanus, Brooklyn, on the left, which I mentioned earlier. That's it.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Okay.
Thank you to everyone. Thank you to everyone who has. I know it's the end of the day, so thank you all for paying attention and putting notes on the board, and for all of our speakers and our organizers. So thank you to everyone. I'm going to hand it over to Bill for 2 concise sentences on synthesizing what we may or may not have learned today.
Wow. Well, I think this conference speaks to the issue of, already of the sessions we've been at today, the question of how things are happening at the local level. And I think this session specifically kind of highlights that. I just want to say a couple things. One is that, based on the comments, and also I should put on my, I'm also connected to the new special report on cities and climate change. And so these are some of the issues that are being by the IPCC. And a couple of things are really emerging in that conversation that are really relevant and kind of reflect this. One is the issue of how. Like, how is stuff actually happening at the local level? And everyone's kind of comments that they brought up on the board speak to that. And the kind of connected to that, the specificity is the issue and the clear understanding that whether it's retreat, relocation, mobility, and connecting to climate change has to also be connected to other questions that are fundamental to how people experience their daily lives. The issue of development, quality of life, well-being, right? So that is, it's almost like all of that and climate change, I think, is really kind of central. And then with that also is this idea of, you know, the constant state of becoming of cities, that they're always emerging, they're always being built and rebuilt. And I think the planning community, as you know, through Jeffrey and Mattia's leadership and many others in this room, have become much more nimble and responsive and flexible to these kinds of changes. And I think, you know, part of that dialogue is how do we build cities that that provide that opportunity for increased well-being, quality of life, but also are flexible and responsive to these demands. And I think sort of circling through all that is the role of the case study. I mean, we started the conversation today in the previous session, but it sort of carries it through. All of us bear witness to these really important case studies that we have to catalog, that we have to document, and that we have to share. And so however you do that is going to be really important to the process. I know, you know, the examples that Mattia and Jeffrey brought forward on their particular projects, and I'm sure there are dozens of other ones that are represented in this room. So the idea is like, how do we share this? Of course, the conference provides that opportunity, but we need other mechanisms, other, you know, through our networks or other vehicles that are available to us to provide that sharing. So again, encourage all to think about those kinds of things. I'm sure we're already doing that. And really, it's great to have everyone in this room to have those kinds of conversations. So with that, I know there's more than 2 sentences. Maybe if I could do like a James Joyce sort of extended long, maybe that was only 2 sentences, you know, but anyway, I'll give it back to Maria.
That's all. Thank you all for joining.